Well, Jonathan, I have started doing this show, recrafting a little bit on just where I end up a lot more curious is I think everybody having the show, they've got some intentional habits and routines to get a positive result in all the spokes of the Ziglar wheel of life. But what are the ones that it's kind of like we talked about you in the first show we did together in 841, talked about you've got your 8 attributes of a messenger, but you said they don't have to have them all. And sometimes they'll have one that's so big it can overcompensate for the others. In the same vein of thinking, what are your top habits and routines? If you look at your day, especially a cramped, tight day where you just can't fit everything in, but man, you're not going to miss these key habits, routines. What bubbles up top of the list for you?
Yeah. So for me, it is my morning success ritual. That's so key and foundational. I mean, it's a 2-hour process for me, but it's that important. And then, how I structure my day as someone who is in, running my own business, but I have employees. So structuring my day for me to be able to get my work done while also managing and communicating with employees, that's kind of the big picture. We can go specific.
Well, 2-hour morning success ritual. I want to know what's happening in 2 hours. That's a good spot. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, that's, it's probably nothing new and exciting, but this is mine. It's the old sharpening the saw that Stephen Covey talks about, but it's the spiritual, mental, and the physical is the way that I look at it. And so typically I brew a cup of coffee, sit down at my kitchen table, and I journal. So I will journal for about 10 or 15 minutes. And then the next thing that I like to do is I like to have a book that I'm reading. So that's kind of the little bit more, I guess those two can be wrapped up into the mental, but I just like maybe spend 10 or 15 minutes in a book. I'm taking notes. Always got a book that I'm reading. From there, I will study the scriptures. So I like this little scripture journal. It's called an ESV scripture journal where you can get just like a particular book of the Bible. And it has, verses on one side, the other side's just lines. And so I can just, circle words, go deep into it. Again, probably another 15 minutes into that process. And so really that part right there takes about an hour. And then from there, I will actually go and work out. So I've got treadmill and things at the home. I got a room just for working out. And typically that's usually right now it's jogging a couple of miles every morning on that aspect, and then go take a shower and get ready for my day. So that really helps me to kind of, I've checked in with myself mentally, spiritually, physically, and now I'm prime for my workday.
What kind of coffee?
So believe it or not, my parents live on Jekyll Island. It's a place I love to go, Jekyll Island, Georgia. And they have this, you can only get it on the island. It's called Jamaican Me Crazy.
Love it.
It's a Jamaican coffee, but it is my favorite. So
Really?
I absolutely love it.
Okay. All right. Can you order it online?
You might be able to. That's a good question. I just have my parents get it, and then it's about an hour and a half for me, and we go up there all the time. We just love Jekyll Island. So
I'm gonna check it out. I love coffee. I love loving coffee, and so I like playing with stuff. Journaling. You said 1 to 15 minutes. I mean, with that, we hear that a lot of times. But I'm curious as to the focal point structure or muse of your journaling.
Yeah, so I've done a lot over the years. I've done what's called morning pages, where you just write whatever, is on your mind, just get rid of whatever, sometimes it's that stinking thinking that you just got to get out on paper. I've done that. But probably more recently, I've done Michael Hyatt's Full Focus Journal, and he's got 7 or 8 prompt questions. How are you feeling right now? What's a win? What are you thankful for? Just really kind of checking in with yourself. It's not too much writing. I'm probably writing a sentence or two for every, all 8 questions. It takes me about 15 minutes, but just kind of helps me check in with myself.
Then the book reading, I can make the assumption that that's not a Stephen King novel.
Yeah.
Probably something different. What's the genre usually?
It's usually connected to some kind of self-development or leadership type material. So I'm reading one right now called Your Brain at Work. And it's been fascinating to kind of read it and understand a little bit more about how our brain works and how we can be more productive when we understand how things work in our brain.
So being a guy who was in traditional employment, then became self-employed, and now you are an advocate, I would say a purveyor of self-employment, entrepreneurialism. When you know, a lot of people can let that really overtake their lives. So what do? You have any specific things that you do to safeguard relationships?
Well, I work at home, so it's always making myself available. At the same time, helping my family understand, when dad's got certain things he's got to do. So I would say the relationship part, that's one part. The other way that I kind of structure my day, and maybe this will make a little bit more sense, and we can get more into it if you want, is I kind of follow this idea of maker mornings, manager afternoons.
Okay.
And so for me, I find that I work best in the mornings, my creative work. So my writing, or, if I'm creating some content, if I'm putting stuff together, if I'm creating a webinar, if I'm doing something that's required of me, that's in the mornings. The afternoons is more for meetings, appointments, podcast interviews like we're doing now, communicating with my team, checking in with my family. Those, to be able to kind of compartmentalize those, helps me to be able to do what Cal Newport calls your deep work.
Yeah.
So your deep work for me is in the mornings, and then afternoons is a little bit more fluid. It's open. And if I don't have anything on my schedule, I can just stop working for the day because, after all, I'm the boss. So I can choose to do that.
And is that, I mean, so you have a lot of people in your organization. I mean, they are where you were. They're in traditional employment. They're looking to do something else. And I know habits and routines are such a big focal point. Do you provide kind of a structure to your audience?
Yeah. So one of the things I did, and again, I think it also goes back to, there's this thing out there. It's called The Power of When, a book, where it talks about the 4 chronotypes and how all of us are wired a little bit differently. But for me, he uses different animals as an example. He talks about the lion. The lion is the person who wakes up early in the morning and is ready to attack the day. So the structure that I like to teach for many people is what I used back when I was doing the full-time recruiting thing, when I had a traditional job, I was still 100% commission. So it's not like I could just go to work and work on my side hustle and expect everything to turn out okay. It was I have to be on when I'm working at my job because, I don't get paid if something doesn't happen. So what I ended up doing, Kevin, that was helpful for me is I had a young family at the time. So like evenings and nights were out because my kids were young and I wanted to spend time with them. So the time that I found was 6 to 8 o'clock a.m. And no one was calling me. Nobody was bothering me. And literally I wrote on a sticky note, work for yourself first. So it was like an encouragement to me. It's actually where I started drinking coffee because I hated coffee before that, but found that coffee helped me to get going too.
Yeah.
And so that was helpful for me to put down those pillars, that these are 10 hours a week, 2 hours every morning that I could spend working for myself first to get to the place that I ultimately want to get to. And I found that consistency breeds momentum, and you begin to build momentum when you start kind of putting that into play and deciding that this is the structure that I'm going to do and I'm going to follow it.
Okay. So let me ask on that again, because of the somewhat unique position that you're in and helping people through a transitional time of life from the norm, if we could say more the norm of employment, to the not as normal of owning your own business and being an entrepreneur. Where do you find people? We look at habits and routines and we look at good structure and we look at the things that build success. where do you find people, where's the biggest struggle for folks overall? Is that a fair question to ask?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, it's the premise of the book, Your Message Matters, is believing you have a message. So that's part one. But after people believe the message, I think the next thing is time. That's what I hear a lot about. Like, how do I carve out time? I don't have time. I'm too busy. And so having the ability to figure that out and owning that time is so critically important. Like you have to, and this is the way I try to describe it, is you have to kind of treat it as a real business. You have to stop dabbling and start dominating and choose that I'm going to treat this like a real business, because it is. It's not a hobby. I mean, it can be if you want it to be that, but most of the people that I'm trying to help, they want to write, speak, teach, coach. They want to do something to influence others with a message. And so in that case, it's about, what would you do if you were the best in the world at what you do?
Yeah.
How would you handle your time if you were the best in the world at what you do? Considering everything you got going on, it's, I've listened to so many Ziglar. I've been in that automobile university. I've heard his stuff over and over and over again. I love that whole concept where he talks about, was it biscuits getting cooked in the squat?
Yeah.
People always getting ready. We're always getting ready. And it's like, before you know it, it circles the whole year, and it's back to the kids going back to school again. And yet we still haven't been intentional about it. And so I think it's choosing to make that decision that I'm going to go pro. And if I decide to go pro, what does that look like? Even in the context of a busy life, there's always a choice. There's always an option.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I think early on, especially in my own business endeavors, I wanted to be the rebel and buck the norm and, do business in crazy ways or whatnot. And sometimes I look today and think I'm kind of boring. And it looks like a real job. Basically, I found out it's just easier. These are the times when most people are at work, and when I need them, they're not available at 3 a.m. If I think it's cool to work, then they're available at 3 p.m. So I kind of work there. I go in, I do that. But back to what you said, I've gotten to where the majority of my work I love, because I get to do what I do. I get to work in my giftings, in my ability.
Yeah.
Well, so when you look, just to you personally, when you look at like the spokes in the Ziglar Wheel of Life, where is there any area, where would you say, if you had to give affirmative action to you, like, that's an area that's not my biggest strong suit, where is it?
For me, it is recreation, and like recreation, hobbies, probably family and friends would be there as well. But it's, it could even, funny enough, it could fit into that personal and self-care a little bit too. But, and here's why, is because for me, and I don't know if you experience this, but if you love so much what you do, that when it comes to the weekends and everyone else has got their own thing, if you're not being checked, you gravitate back towards your work.
Yep.
And that's not always helpful. You need hobbies, you need friends, you need things to do that isn't related to your work. And so if there's one area that I've been trying to work better at, it's that.
And that's where I usually end, is that personal spoke and looking at what are the things you do. And my dad, that was him for the majority of my life. I mean, what did he do? He worked. What was his hobby? His work. And he didn't really separate that. And it's been, I don't know how many years you would say, but now they spend so much time at the house that they're, moving from now, but doing the landscaping, doing some of the fun things there. And my mom has gotten into her art, and they have these things that I didn't grow up seeing as well. Yeah. So maybe your answer is you don't have a whole lot, but on the personal side. So if you got to go do something just for you, just for fun, for Jonathan, is there anything, a hobby or an outlet, an experience, entertainment that you gravitate towards?
So I decided to be intentional at the beginning of this year to find something. And what I ended up falling on was something I loved to do when I was a kid, and it was collecting baseball cards.
Really?
So when I
Cool.
was a little kid, my grandfather owned a hardware store. He actually owned 3 hardware stores in Indiana. But on Saturdays, he would allow me and my brothers, I'm the oldest of 3 boys, to come and set up a stand inside his store and sell baseball cards. And this was, in the 80s back, and there was just, the craze was happening around baseball, and then basketball
Yeah.
cards came around. Well, then as an adult, I came back around to it. And, today it's much more sophisticated. It's much more around graded sports cards that you can invest in. And then, that those cards go up in value and you can turn around and sell them. And so I found that it was a great outlet because I grew up loving sports, and now it gives me reasons to cheer for certain people because, their rookie card might double in value, and I can turn around and sell that card if I choose to. And so it's been a great outlet for me as somebody who likes to be competitive but do something attached to something like sports and sports card investing. It's been a great, fun hobby
Yeah.
for me to help me stop thinking about my work all the time.
Yeah. That's so interesting. Okay, here's an oddball question I'm going to throw at you, Jonathan. I've never asked anybody specifically, but it came up yesterday. I was doing a show with Tom Ziglar, and I don't know what prompted. No, it was asking people about gratitude, like things that they were grateful for, like the first thing that comes to your mind. And had one guy say it was his guitar. He had just bought a new guitar, and oh, how he loved it. And I kind of resonated with it because I just did a getaway by myself, and I did a lot of mountain biking. I used to be a pro cyclist, and I left it and didn't do much. And this year, I don't know what, man, I had the bug, and I got a new mountain bike, and I love that thing. So it's a material possession. And I told one of my kids was asked something. I said, man, it is my favorite material possession, is that bike, that piece of metal there that rolls. But I thought this guy got me thinking about it because it can belie some other things, some other interests. Is there that? And maybe that's it. Maybe it's your cars, but something that it's a material possession. You look at it and you go, oh, it just gives you joy.
Crazy enough, it's actually a Ken Griffey Jr. rookie card because it was the rookie card as a kid I always wanted. I opened up so many packs of baseball cards, never got this card. It was the card that all my friends wanted, everybody wanted. It was like the card. And when I first got back into this, I said, you know what? I know it's from 1989, but I'm going to go buy a graded rookie card of the card I always wanted. Yeah. And so I still have that card today. And then on top of that, I think, I think the other thing was, I spent a week or two with my parents up in Jekyll Island where they now live. And my dad used to buy boxes of baseball cards for us to actually open up the wrappers and all that. And I bought a box of cards when I was up there this past summer, and we took turns opening up the cards and just sitting down there and looking through the cards. And it just brought me back to like when I was a kid, 10 years old, and my dad would bring home a box of cards for his boys to open. So yeah, it's got a lot of meaning to it.
I have great appreciation for that. So just as we happen to be getting close to the end of the year, and, I find people like you, influencers, people with a message, and people who have an intentional life, the first of the year, New Year's resolutions is not necessarily some big thing because you're doing that all year long, but it's still a relevant time. And I often find sometimes people are thinking of maybe an area of life that, okay, I want to advocate for this in the new year, personal, business, whatever. Anything jump to mind for you?
I mean, I can give you a list of things. For me, what's challenging me at the moment is leadership. Because as my business is growing, what got you here is not going to always get you there. And, I started it by myself. Now we've got around 15, employees that are doing things at, different parts and different pieces, and considering bringing on 1 or 2 more. And so for me, it is painting the vision, but then I need to develop myself to be a good leader. I can't just continue to do what I'm doing and allow people to not be growing themselves or not making sure the right seats are on the right bus, right? Make sure they're in the right place and pouring into them, seeing them grow, creating a good culture, all those things that are challenging me. Whereas when I just did this by myself, it was just learning and doing things on my own. And so for me, I see that as the next level that is going to be a challenge. but that is, that's where I'm trying to get, build the right habits and get better at.
Yeah. Hey, thanks. Thanks for giving us a behind the scenes into what makes Jonathan Milligan tick and bring forth a message that matters. Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thanks.